Good evening, folks.
Good evening, everyone.
We all ready for this one?
Yep, as always.
As always,
Yeah.
yes. Scott never was a Boy Scout, but he was always prepared, so
Yeah,
could have been.
coulda, shoulda, woulda.
So, before we get any deeper, on my little Facebook, what do you call it? Feed trough, whatever it is. There was a deal this week. Someone had discovered the dog Judy, the World War II dog, was a prisoner of war in Japanese, and it just reminded me of. Once again, we did a thing on the top 5 books to read to learn about dogs. If I was going to do a top 5 book to read about dogs, a dog who done heroic everythings, it's called Never a Better Friend. It's the story of Judy in World War II, lived through 3 different Japanese prisoner of war camps, saved the lives of hundreds of POWs. If I was to list my top 5 books about dogs, I would list Never a Better Friend as number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Great book. If you want to read something really about a cool dog. Anyway, that said, we got military dogs. How about guard dogs?
How about guard dogs? How about them guard dogs?
Yeah, it's pretty good business. I thought.
Bet you have some pretty good trials and tribulations about the guard dog business.
You do get trials and tribulations, you know.
I'd like to hear a few of those.
It's actually one of the few businesses you can go into where satisfying your customer doesn't mean necessarily always just giving him good service. It can also mean not getting him ate.
Right.
You know. So we'll background this a little bit. Scott and I have been. On Saturdays we do our training for our security dog class, and every now and then we'll see a dog, and it'll kind of remind me of one of the ones that I used to have in the guard dog business. We'll sit around and chaw about them, and we're talking about Rottweilers. And of course, in the past you may have heard me refer to a dog named Samson, who Judy's up here. Mick here is right there, and Samson would be right here. In the 10 or so years I had Samson, I can honestly say nobody ever, anyone who ever touched him was bleeding except me. He was a unique little critter. He was, well, I'll give you an example. You never know what. So we had 3 classifications of guard dogs in the industry. You have a fence dog. Fence dogs are the kinds you can use you could use in a school. They're going to be a real prey-driven animal, maybe a male who's real yap. And the customers they're building a construction site somewhere, and it's right next to a residential area, and the construction guy doesn't want his stuff stolen, but he doesn't want to get a kid bit, because there's a lot of times on construction sites it's kids that are going in and vandalizing or stealing stuff. So you get a fence dog. Fence dog is one that'll go in there, and anything he hears outside his fence or his territory, they hit that fence and put on a big display. Okay?
So ward them off.
Yeah.
His bark's bigger than his bite.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he bites too, but just the barking of a dog is very intimidating.
Right.
Inside a fence when it's there and slobbering and barking and
Yeah.
a deterrent.
A deterrent dog. That with the signs, But then you have the cases where they've got some sort of a business where material is valuable that thieves can resell. Believe it or not, one of the biggest business that we ever had was, our best customers I ever had was a an importer who was importing jeans. I guess they were made in Mexico. And they were breaking into, they had a little storage facility. Hey, Aries! They had a little storage facility, not a little, very nice big storage facility, and thieves were coming in there, busting and kicking in the door, throwing cases and cases and cases of jeans in the back of their vehicle, all an ass. They wanted these people stopped, and if the dog bit them, they didn't care. So there's your second dog. There's what we call a guard dog, all right? The third category was what I call an insurance dog. And some people may have heard me explain this before, so bear with me if you have. The insurance dog, there were cases, for instance, a business partnership that breaks up. And in this case, for the business, they'll go litigation to the judge and go through the legal system about the assets. And the judge will say, until this is settled, I give complainant number one, you, the authority to run the business until everything's settled. And complainant number two will be me. You can't go near the place, okay? So in these cases, there were times when complainant number one wanted to make sure that if complainant number two showed up, he was not just deterred, he was chewed upon. Husband and wife breakups were real big. I had a lot of women domestic violence victims that, hello Aries, that table in the wrong place for you, buddy? So we had the insurance dog. The reason we call them an insurance dog is if someone came on that site, there was going to be blood, plain and simple. If there was blood, there's always potential for lawsuits and things of that nature. The insurance on a guard dog company, for all you out there thinking you want to start one, the cost of the insurance is ridiculous. And you don't need your dogs, you don't need anybody filing anything in that insurance company, or you ain't gonna be able to afford to stay in business.
Right.
So what I did for the really, really tough dogs that I knew hated everybody, we had a bill of sale. I sold the dog to business number one for $1, whatever. And he hired me to feed and care for the dog and to release the dog every night. Dog was all on their insurance. I didn't have any ownership or any part of it. Samson, over the years, I had 5 different insurance dogs. Samson was number one. There were 2 Samsons. I had a Samson that was a Rottie and a Samson that was a German Shepherd. Both badasses, but my Rottie was something special. There's unique things that can happen.
Yep.
You know, you get a business person who's not aware. Anyway, to give you an example, and I'm going to go into some of the business side of this as well in just a minute. So I had a customer call me. They were right on the Rio Grande. I think everybody's heard of the Rio Grande River over the last year or so. You know, this was before we had 9,642 migrants an hour swimming across. But it was right there. Mexico was right here. And this gentleman had come down for some big national propane natural gas company, something I can't remember exactly what it was. And he was from North Dakota, and he was coming down and starting up this business for them, getting it running. They had one really big yard. It was probably close to a football field size. Not 100 yards long, but a whole lot wider. All in all, probably about that size. And all they had was trucks after trucks after trucks. And then they had a great huge propane tank, and they had a butane tank. And then they had a trailer in there for their office. So he called me, and his old boy's from North Dakota, or South Dakota. He cowboyed up there, and he knew a little bit about animals. Turned out to be a good thing. And they had been coming across the river, jumping his fence. Had an 8-foot fence, didn't bother them. Had razor wire, didn't bother the professionals. And they were taking batteries out of the trucks. They were cutting all the wires loose. They loved, the big thing at that time was taking the suspension systems, and they used those hydraulics for their high-low cars and things like that. The equipment he had, the hydraulic forklifts and things like that. And they were taking them to the cleaners. So he called me and, he said, I want a dog in here. He said, and I'm not talking about these, he dealt with guard dogs before up north. And he said, I don't want a dog in here where you put up a sign and hope the sign's going to scare people away. I want a dog in here that's going to kill somebody. So I said, okay. We did. My usual routine was when we deliver our dog to the site the first time, I have one of my guys on the site, hidden in a suit. Take the dog out, turn him loose in the yard, and we see what happens. So I brought Samson to this guy, and I told him, I said, there's a little extra charge, and we got to do some extra stuff. He said, I don't care. He said, I'm stopping these thieves. So we turned Samson loose, and he was, to say the least, thrilled at what he saw. So I'm bringing Samson. It'd been going on for probably about a month. He'd had 0 break-ins. He had indication where like his fence had been cut, like it had been. There'd been like 2 links cut, and then there was no more links cut. All right. So he's happy with Samson, and it's a Saturday morning. I've dropped Samson off there a little after sunup, and now I'm back at my office. About 9 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, and bear with me, folks. It's been 20 years ago. I'm trying to remember all the facts here. I believe his name was Tom. He's on the phone. He says, Butch, it's Tom. Yes, sir. He said, I'm at the site. Or I'm at my office. I said, yeah. He said, Samson's loose in the yard. I said, yeah, right. He said, I'm in the yard with him.
Oh, hell.
I said, you're what? He said, I'm in the yard with him. I said, what's going on? He said, I came in early this morning to do some paperwork, and you dropped the dog off while I was in my office. Hold on, I'll call you back. Oh, shit. So I'm waiting. I was going to call him, then I'm thinking, no, because I don't know what's going on. I don't want his phone to ring. If Samson, he calls me back. He said, I got to talk quick before he hears me. So what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to get out of this yard. Get over here as quick as you can. Click. Yeah. I jump in my truck, and then I'm driving south like, hell yeah, I ain't wasting no damn time. Run 2 red lights, getting there. But I got there, pull up to the fence, the gate, and standing about 5 or 6 feet, let me give you a little, you go in the gate, and it goes way back. But right up to the corner of the fence was the trailer that they used for their office. It's about 10, 15, 30, 40, 50. It's about 50, 60 feet from the door of that office to the gate to go out. Tom's standing about 5 feet from the gate, just standing there. Now, one of the things that I love about Samson, he'd hear my truck coming, whatever, half a mile away, and whatever side he was on, he always came and greeted me. I'm sorry, I just got this picture in my head again, and now I can laugh at it. Whatever side he was on, he would be at the gate before I got there, waiting to go home. If there had been any action on the site the night before, I'd open the gate, and instead of jumping in the truck with me, he'd look up at me, turn, and take off running, and he'd take me to the scene. Sometimes I'd find a guy in a dumpster. Sometimes I'd just find where a fence was cut. But whatever, if something happened in that night, Samson would take me to him. So I bail out. I see Tom standing there. Like I said, he's probably about 8-10 feet from the gate. Samson's at the gate like he always is. Now, if there's nothing going on the night before, Samson would greet me by just being seated, waiting patiently. If something had happened and he'd run somebody off, he'd be up on all four, wagging his little nub, right? So when I step out of the truck this time, Samson's standing straight up, and his little nub's going. I mean, and like I said, he would always take me to the scene of wherever something had happened. And Tom's standing stiff as a board. He's looking straight up at the sky. I remember I said, this guy was been around livestock all his life and had working dogs. It's paid off. He's looking straight up at the sky, and that's the only place he's looking. Samson, I open the gate, and Samson turns around, runs 2 or 3 steps, looks back at Tom, runs over there to him, jumps up, and punches him with his nose. Jumps up and punches him with his nose. Scared the bejesus out of me, man. Samson, front, here, come on, buddy, come on. Fling open the gate, he jumps in the truck. Tom, if have you ever seen a cotton field?
Mm-hmm.
You know how white, brand new cotton looks when it's just been freshly grown?
Mm-hmm.
Tom was whiter than that. And this man, when I met him, was well tanned. He'd been all his life in the sun. He's stuttering. I get him, we get over, walk back to the truck. Now it took me a half hour to get there. Plus his phone call, time I waited. It was probably 45 minutes from the time that he called me till I got there and got the dog away from him. He'd been in the yard with Samson all that time. So we catch his breath. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, but we go in the office, and he tells me that don't tell his boss, but he pulls out a big old bottle of whiskey and pours himself a shot. And I says, what in the hell happened? He said, I had dropped him off that morning, but he had parked his truck because the sun was going to be coming up. He parked his truck over off to the side, outside the gate. He didn't drive it in the gate, unfortunately. Or fortunately. He parked it over. I didn't see the truck. It was like sunup. But he's got old cowboy habits. He would get up there at sunrise and he'd work. So I just turned the dog loose. He said it was probably about 10 o'clock. He just opened the door and he walked out, steps outside, and their whole lot was covered in gravel. And he said he just heard something. He's walking to the gate, like I said, 50, 75 feet. He turns around and looks, and here comes Samson at him, full bore. He said, I just froze. He froze. Samson runs up. He's not moving. Samson comes in, sits, looks up at him, barks. And Samson, one of the coolest things about him was I called him a Michael Jordan dog. Because if anybody came to the fence, and I've got a picture of this I've showed Scott. If anybody came to a fence to break in, Samson, if you were 5 foot tall, he jumped 5 foot. If you were 6 foot tall, he jumped 6 foot. And he seemed to jump, and he would hang in the air and rah, 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 sling a little slobber and drop down. So Tom said that damn dog jumped straight up, looked me in the eye, slung some slobber on me, and started barking and hit the ground. He said, and I knew if the wind blew a hair on my head, he's going to get me. So I just sat there. And what had happened, he would wait Samson would try to get him to move. He said he'd run up and punch him. He got behind him at one point, and was pushing his legs with his head. Samson didn't bite nothing if you weren't moving or fighting him. He's not supposed to bother you. He's trying everything he could to make this man start walking or just blink. Tom says he's about about 10 feet from the gate. And he looks at me and he says, he said, I'd stand still. He'd get bored. He'd run off and go check out between the trucks because he always checked out his territory. He said, I'd start walking slow, looking. All of a sudden I hear crunch, 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 and I knew he was coming. I lock up and would stare straight at the sky. He'd swing around right in front of me and start jumping up and down, slinging that slobber like he does. And I didn't move. And I said, well, how long? He said, we're talking, this is a 60-foot trailer. We're talking about 50, 60 feet. It had taken him an hour, a little over an hour to get from that front door to within 5 feet of that gate.
Oh, it's a long morning.
It's a long morning. And I asked him, I said, well, I'll never forget. I said, so you just froze? He said, Butch, I froze. He said, and if St. Peter would have stuck his hand down from heaven, held it out to me and said, come on, Tom, you're coming in the pearly gates, I'd have had to look at him and say, St. Peter, I ain't moving nothing right now.
He did a good job, though.
Yeah, and and I mean, Tom appreciated how good the dog was. So we had that contract for 3 or 4 more months.
Did you have a sign built, I'm here?
Yeah, well, we did make a deal where he parks at the front gate from now on if he's there early, or even better, call me first.
Yep.
So it's the only business you can get into where you have to worry about whether not servicing your customer, but not mauling your customer.
Right.
Yeah,
mental error.
Yeah, mental error.
Forget, it happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest problems was because we had at the height of it, I had 4 different routes. So each driver had about 8 sites to go to, and you get to one site and there's been a break-in.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen. You're delayed getting to the next site. When we got that big, that was my job. I was the rover. So Michael would call me. Whoops.
Guys.
Hey, Aries.
That's Aries.
Mike would call me and say, hey, I'm at Seco Trucking and there's somebody here, a crook here, and I got to get to Plain Chevrolet. So I'd run over there and pick up the dogs. That was my job, in case someone got delayed. But the one universal problem all businesses have sometimes is bill collecting, right? And in El Paso, Texas, where they've been making a living from people from Mexico coming across the border, stealing from the gringos since 1820 something. There's some gringos who picked up the same bad habits. Some of them are in business. And they will rookie do you. And I've had a lot of people over the years say, for different situations, aren't you afraid? Like it happened just the other day. Carol Ann can tell you, somebody pulled up, I was gone, they didn't have a check or something. I said, well, just, go on home, take your dog, send me a check. We do that pretty regular. It's a habit I got into in the guard dog business because I never worried about anybody not paying me. I met several people who tried not to pay me. But I had one guy, got time for one more story?
I got time for another one. Yeah.
Okay, so This is another Samson. I got more Samson stories than anything else because that little boy was, ooh, he was something. So I had this. We had guards. We had canine teams. A guard and a dog would patrol various areas. We did labor strikes and did a prison riot one time, and then we had like this shopping mall. And they were having all kind of trouble with little gangbangers painting their walls and busting windows in the shops. So we had a canine team there. And obviously that's the most costly service we provided because we got the dog, but I got to pay the guard. He's got to be qualified, know what he's doing, know how to handle a dog. So you got to pay them a little bit. And we started this shopping mall, and they were great. They paid first 2 months just right on the spot. Third month come on. It was a lady, some lady in her 30s or something. She was the mall manager. Started the third month, and come time to pay, and she said, "Well, such and such. I got to go out of town. Can you come back in 2 weeks? I'll have a check ready for you." I said, "Sure, no problem." And went back in 2 weeks, and no one answered the office door. So I called. No one answered the phone. Guard goes on, continue working there another week and a half, and I can't get a hold of this lady for nothing. So I went around to one of the stores and said, "Hey, whatever happened to the manager?" And they said, "Oh, they're selling them all. They sold it." Come to find out, the reason they wanted my guards there was to clean the place up so it looked better so they could sell it to another investor. So I said, "Okay, how do I get a hold of her?" And they said, "Well, her office is right now." I said, "She ain't been in her office in 3 weeks now." "Well, I don't know. Her dad's the man who owns the place, and she just manages it." "Okay, how do I get a hold of her dad?" "Well, he runs another business. He's got a fencing business." So they gave me. I got the name of the business. Drive down to this industrial area, and there's his office. I go knock on the door. I said, "I'm looking for Mr. So-and-so, And the lady said, he leaves at noon. Your best to catch him in the morning." So I called the next morning, and he said, "I'll get a check." Shorten this tale. He strings me along for about a month. "Yep, check's in the mail." "Up, I forgot to put it in there. I'll get it to you right now." So I know I'm getting rookie dude. His office, he's got a supply yard behind it, but it's just like a little house, right? And the supply yard's behind it. Driveway, the carport, and we pull up there and park. So one of my little visits to the door, I asked the secretary, I said, when can I catch this man? And she said, "Oh, he usually gets here before everybody. He gets here around 7, and then does his stuff and leaves, and we all get there." Okay. So I wait till the next morning, load Samson up in the truck, about 6 o'clock, drive out to where his office is. Excuse me. Me and Samson go for a little walk, get him all tuned up with the area, take him over to the door, and it had one of these bar things across the door, you can push. I tied Samson on a 4-foot lead to the door. I was parked on the curb in front. Sure enough, here he comes, turns in, pulls up to the driveway, steps out of his car, walks about 5 or 6 feet, sees Samson, stops. Didn't realize he was tied to his door, of course, so he had a stray dog there. Like, "Get out of here!" Yells at him. Samson stands up and looks at him. He reaches around, picked up some rocks or something, some gravel out of the driveway, and flings it at him. Oh shit, that wasn't the right thing to do. Samson comes unfreaking glued. That poor old man, and he was an older gentleman. I shouldn't have done this to him, but He trips over himself trying to get the hell away from that dog. Drops all the stuff he had in his arms, and I jump out of the truck, go up there, and I look at him and I say, Mr. So-and-so, I need to get paid. And he says, get that dog off my door. That's your dog. He's cussing. He's mad like hell, yeah. And I'm going. I said, I'm not going anywhere till I get a check. And he finally calmed down. He looks at me and says, well, I can't get you a check if that dog's in the doorway. Get the dog out of the doorway. And I said, okay, but I'm gonna take him over here, and you're gonna go in the door. And if you're not back out in 15 minutes, I'm gonna tie him back to the door, and I'm gonna go down the street to Dunkin' Donuts and get some coffee. What's gonna happen if my employees drive up? I don't have any idea, but it ain't gonna be pretty. I'll shoot that dog. I'll call the cops for you discharging a firearm in the city limits. This is an industrial area. There's people walking all around. You are going to go to jail if you try something like that. He looks at me and he thinks,
No.
if I go in the office, I can't come out of the office.
Right.
If somebody pulls up, if I call somebody, they can't shoot the dog because he's going to call the cops on me. And this guy probably didn't have a great relationship with the El Paso PD anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, get your blank dog. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He walks in there, writes out a check. And Samson got a new title. He was not only my #1 insurance dog, he became chief of my collection agency.
Collection agency. There we go.
So, anyway, that's. I start
Mhm.
reminiscing. I get carried away.
It's all
Excuse
good.
me.
It's all good. No,
Huh?
it's good. Hope you all enjoyed that tonight.
Yeah,
It was very interesting.
a little different.
That's only a few. You come on Saturdays, you sit down with us after training, and pretty amazing stories go around.
Don't tell them that, they won't show up.
Oh well, they gotta come find out for themselves.
And I still get once or twice a month. I'll get somebody calling me saying, "You got a guard dog company? I'm up here in Illinois or Boston or wherever." How do you start? I got some poor guy's been in the hospital with a heart transplant or something, and he's called me about 6 times. What kind of dog do I look for? How much should I pay for it? He's thinking when he gets out of the hospital with his artificial heart, he's going to start him a guard dog business. But I don't think
They'll
that's.
put it to the test.
Yeah, see how good those doctors really are.
Yeah.
But it's a unique industry. It gave me, as I'm fond of saying, I've been in the dog training and pet industry for many years before I got in the guard dog business. I read all the books, I went to all the seminars, I saw all the top trainers, and then I got a guard dog company and took everything they taught me and threw it away because none of the dogs had read them same damn books that I was reading. So we just commenced writing our own books, how to survive.
That's it.
So anyway, that's it. I guess we need to plug our book one more time. Don't forget, one more time, Lifestyle Dog Training.
Dog training, that's right.
What do you think? Got any suggestions for next week?
I got a few, but I'll keep you guys on your toes. We'll have something next week for you again. But check on Facebook or our sites and everything else, and Bush will post what we're talking about. So, as always, though, thanks for your time. And different aspects of dogs is always interesting, ain't it?
Always
I
interesting.
mean, it's all about the dog. So let's keep it that way.
Keep it that way. See y'all next week.
y'all
We hope
next
you
week.
enjoyed it.
Bye.